Hey there, I'm Michelle, and welcome to the Leadership Growth Lab, the podcast where we ditch the leadership fluff and get into what actually works. If you're a new or emerging leader trying to figure out how to lead people without losing your mind or your integrity, you're in the right place. I've spent over 30 years leading teams, making mistakes, and learning the hard way so you don't have to. This isn't about motivational posters and feel-good quotes. This is real talk, real stories, and real strategies to help you become the leader you're meant to be. Let's get into it.
Well, hello, leaders. So excited for today's topic because it's the WIIFM. We all know and have heard of the WIIFM. If you haven't heard of a WIIFM, it is what's in it for me. WIIFM. So this applies towards a lot of different areas of leadership and sales. But really, we're going to focus on the leadership and leading through change, because I think that is one of the most difficult things as leaders that we encounter is when have we have to communicate a change, or we are going to implement a change for the betterment of a procedure, of the company, of the team, whatever it might be. We know this change needs to be made. What do we also know about humans? They hate change. They love the status quo. There's very few people who are like, yes, let's just change everything we're doing. No, they like to feel secure, solid, that they understand what they're doing, that they can achieve what they're doing, that they feel competent. People don't like feeling unsettled, and change brings a lot of unsettledness, right? It brings along a lot of lack of confidence, and you feel not so competent in what you're doing because you're learning, right? But your job, your role as a leader is to really challenge your team and to adapt and change when necessary. Now, I am not in the school of making change just for the sake of making change. There needs to be a strategic reason behind your change. And, there are times where you're going to be handed down a change from your upper leadership, and now you have to sell that, quote unquote, to your team. And you may not fully believe in it or agree with it, but you need to have that discussion one-on-one with your direct superior, and they need to bring the WIIFM for you so that you can wrap your head around how you're going to present this to your team in a positive way to get them on board. Because ultimately, things like that, it's not negotiable. The change is happening. So we got to get on board, and we got to navigate it and implement it and make it a go. So the best way to get your team on board with that is to figure out, first of all, as a team, what is the WIIFM for the team? That's number one. So kind of like a global overview, what is the WIIFM? What is going to be the benefit to them to make this change and implement this change? Then you need to go even more granular, because you need each and every individual person on your team to buy in to what this change is, what this change means, and really embrace it wholeheartedly. Because there are going to be difficult moments. There are going to be some ugly before you get to the pretty, right? There are going to be things that are going to just really stretch them and challenge them, and they're not going to like it. So we have to remind them of the overall goal, what really truly is in it for them. I'll give you a really quick change that we did, and it was really about how we are sending out contracts and how we are building a proposal of costs for the clients so that they have a more realistic idea of what this event will cost them if they make these, go with these selections. Because here's what was happening in the past. We have standard food and beverage. Well, we had, now it's different, but we had standard food and beverage minimums across the board. And so when a contract was written, it was written for the food and beverage minimum. And that's it. They weren't quoted on any specific menu. They weren't given any kind of realistic pricing for the size of group that they had. They were just contracted for a food and beverage minimum. And everything else was to be dealt with later. The problem with that model was that people were coming back and in their head, they were, say, contracted for $5,000, right? Then they go and make their menu selections and we put together their menu and then send them an updated event order and it's double or triple what their food and beverage minimum was. They had no concept of that. They had no idea of that. So it was really causing a lot of unhappiness in our clients. And it was really seen as a lack of transparency on our part that we were kind of getting them in at this lower food and beverage minimum. And in our client's eyes, knowing full well that it was going to be way more expensive than that. So what we have started to do now is to provide a very structured sample proposal of costs based on our conversation with them. So we find out, what kind of meal service they're looking for, how many people, if there's, bar involved, but kind of the run of the event. So it can change. They can choose a different menu, they can choose a different package, all of those things. But we give them a proposal of costs based on the conversation we're having during that query phase so that they walk away with realistic numbers of what they can expect. Yeah, those numbers can go up, those numbers can go down depending on what they actually choose as their final menu, where their actual numbers end up, so long so as they're meeting their food and beverage minimum for that space. So see how that's a little different? Well, the team had a big problem with this because it's quicker and easier just to quote on a food and beverage minimum and spit out a contract. The problem was in the back end, we were ending up losing a lot of repeat business because they saw us as shifty and shady, not being transparent with our pricing. And that was causing a lot of problems on other team members in the department. So the salesperson was kind of quick in movement and booking. But then the coordination side of things, the person who's actually detailing the event was having all kinds of pushback and issues with the clients. And then we ended up making all these concessions after the fact versus presenting our upfront transparent pricing. So the salespeople obviously had some resistance to this because they're like, that's just a lot of work to do. That what's the point of the coordinator? The point of the coordinator is to still do all of the details of that event because a lot of things change from the moment you sign that contract to the moment you walk in the door. There is lots of, you know, event detail planning, like timeline of the day. There's menu selection. There is tweaking of the bar service, whether it's cash bar, open bar, reception bar, all of those types of things. That there is room layout, decor, all kinds of stuff that goes into actually running the day of the event. So the coordinator still has plenty of things to do. They have to secure the audio visual, secure, you know, all of those itty bitty gritty details. So there's plenty for the event coordinator to do on top of what the sales has already done. What this does, though, is it provides the coordinator kind of like a blueprint to go off of okay, here's where we started, and here's where, now I'm going to have conversations with this client, and maybe we can build on this. Versus the coordinator in the past would just come in completely blind, kind of like the client was coming in blind and not knowing where to go with it. So, yes, it takes a little bit more work up front. And there are some, just when I think that I bought the WIIFM for it, somebody comes screeching back and is like, but we could just, yeah, you could just, and here's what that's going to cost. And then they're like, you're right. So it's a better qualification. It's a better conversation. It presents us as more professionals and as allies and really industry. Like we really are the person that is advising them on their events. We are providing suggestions for the best case scenario. Like we take all of their information that they provide that they're kicking out during the question and qualifying phase, and that we're putting that on paper to show them what that looks like. So we're translating it, what their wants and needs are, and we're translating it and then showing them what all of that will cost. Because a lot of clients just have no concept. And our job is to ensure that we are advising them appropriately of their options, of how they can go, and then we tweak it until we find a place that we're both happy. And that's really our goal. So the WIIFM for them was that we are going to have more repeat clients. We are going to have more transparent pricing. We are going to have clients and coordinators that are a lot happier with the process. We are going to come off as more professionals, and it really isn't. Their main complaint was that it takes so much more time. It really doesn't, because now everything is built in the system. So it took some time to kind of get them through that transition, to get them on board with it. And for the most part, we're there. Every now and then it rears its ugly head, mainly when it gets busy and they have a lot of proposals to do. That's typically when they're like, can we just, no, you can't. We're going to stick to this because it works. We found it effective. Our clients are happy. And it actually leads to a more solid contract situation because our clients know what they're contracting for. They know what the estimated costs are. They know what to expect. And that is really important for setting us apart from a lot of other venues. So, how you communicate a change, how you communicate and get your team on board is really kind of showing them what this does for them day to day. And every single person that you encounter is going to have a different motivation behind it. You will need to overcome some obstacles because you're going to have some pushback from some people that are used to doing it a certain way uh, and really don't want to change. And you're going to have to talk through with them, and you're going to have to ask them a lot of questions of like, so I understand that you're a little resistant to this. Can you walk me through why? Can you tell me why, to what you're encountering that is making it where you don't want to implement this change? And if we basically through that, you are able to cut through all the what I call BS of, well, it's difficult, it's this and that. We overcome all the obstacles that they're throwing out there, and you show them that it's actually better. And then they really kind of have to just try it. And some of them will still be resistant, some of them won't like it. But at the end of the day, if it is a new procedure, then you're going to have to get on board. And I don't like pulling that. I understand you don't like it. I understand all this, but this is what we need to do. So, how can I help you get there? How can I help make this an easier transition for you? How can I help you basically get on board and get behind this? So I don't like going that route, but sometimes you have to. You have to get that far into the conversation and into the transition that you just are saying like, listen, you got to get on board, honey. This is just where we're at. So how have you built in the WIFM for your team? How have you implemented change? How have you ensured that your team is firing on all cylinders, that you're rowing in the same direction, and you've overcome those objections that they have when implementing change? How have you found their WIFM? What's been effective, and what roadblocks have you encountered? I'd love to get a conversation going. That's all I have for you today, leaders. Until next time, lead yourself and the rest you follow.
All right, that's a wrap for today's episode of the Leadership Growth Lab. I hope you're walking away with at least one thing you can put into practice this week, because that's what it's all about: real growth, real progress. If you found this helpful, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and share it with somebody who's navigating their own leadership journey. Remember, great leaders aren't born, they're built, and you're doing the work. I'll see you next time.